You inform me people are already drafting, and it functions as a pretty interesting look ahead to early 2023 drafts, which will be getting going. So, I mean, are already going, but even like normal people will start drafting like May and June.
Hey, man.
Kyle, you highlighted
even well-adjusted people will be drafting in 3 months.
Yeah, I know exactly. Sorry, the way I phrased that. I mean, even people who aren't just hopelessly sick and addicted to this will be drafting by May and June.
That's right.
Kyle, people will be drafting in 3 months. Kyle, all right, one more, Daugherty, then we go to the next segment.
Yeah, you highlighted some interesting ADP so far. There are 3 quarterbacks currently going in the top 16 or 17 and on underdog already. What do you make of this? Late round QB, it's always been a little more dead in best ball, but is it deader than ever heading into 2023?
Yeah, I don't think this is like a bad reaction. I don't know if I'll be getting a ton of these players, but like it makes sense, right? You look at even like where, especially in best ball, where the bigger games are really what matters. Like Kirk Cousins putting in his hours and getting you between 13 and 19 every week, even if that results in a good average, the average QB 10 or whatever, isn't particularly useful. It's the spike weeks that matter the most. And frankly, I think that's probably underrated in season long as well, right? But even just looking at best ball, it's those big weeks that matter. And you got just almost no big weeks from the latter half of the quarterback range last year. It was like Geno Smith gave you some big weeks. Jared Goff gave you some big weeks. Then you have to go all the way up the line to like Justin Fields, like QB 14 or whatever, to find consistent big weeks. So that's a gap of 20 quarterbacks, including some of the guys who are drafted as like he may or may not play this year, like 20 some guys, where 2 of them were able to give you just multiple weeks over like 25 points. So we saw in the outcomes last year that the way to get 30 burgers from your quarterback consistently was to have one of the elite ones. So I think the adjustment makes sense. Do I think that it's maybe an over adjustment? I think that's probably true. I think almost every year we see the market look at what happened last year and say, that's what's going to happen again this year. We need to do that. I think there will probably be some breakout quarterbacks in the second half of the QB range, the QB2 and beyond, who consistently give you big games, or maybe consistent wouldn't be the word, but who are able to give you multiple big games. It's just picking them out, especially last year. It was really hard. Like Geno Smith being the guy, one of the 2 guys that really got you there if you went super late at quarterback. That one is mind-blowing. Goff, a little bit so, less so. Geno Smith really was something special.
Kerrane, what do you think of the 3 quarterbacks going in the top 16, 17, by the way, of course, Patty Mahomes, Josh Allen, and the new best quarterback in the NFC, Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I'm not really into it. I think that it's a lot to pay for quarterback. I don't think it's like maybe crazy off. Like if these guys were more like in the 3rd round, I probably would be more interested. But it is a lot to spend on a quarterback when, you can find spike weeks later in the draft. Not usually at the very end of the draft, as Kyle was noting, but there usually is a pocket of quarterbacks kind of going around where Fields was, where Lawrence was, that will provide some of those spike weeks more infrequently, but you can use 3 quarterback builds with those guys. I think 3 quarterback builds this time of year probably makes more sense anyway, because, there's way more uncertainty. And so you're kind of giving yourself more of a chance to have 3 healthy quarterbacks throughout the course of the season and then fill or get enough healthy weeks because you have 3. I mean, so I think what it is that kind of early on right now, there's so much uncertainty at the top of the draft. People aren't sure who they're going to take. And so it's like, well, I know Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, so I'm just going to go ahead and lock him up at like the 15th pick, and then I'll figure out the rest later. But these are very top-heavy tournaments that are going on right now. And my feeling is that Mahomes and Allen and Hurts will be pricier than they were last year, but probably cheaper than they are now. So I'm likely to get my exposure to those ultra-elite quarterbacks, or at least most of my exposure later, I think, is going to be my plan. Get them when they're going more like the 3rd, maybe the early 4th, something like that, and try to be right in these early rounds with the skill players. I mean, because you're getting a chance to, get more skill players than you like. The skill player pool sort of getting like there's more value in it because there's quarterbacks mixed in. So, and because there's so much uncertainty, you could potentially create pairings here that are just absolutely dominant. in ways that is harder to do later in the summer when we have a much better idea of which skill players should be going at the very top. So I'm more inclined to try to figure out quarterback later, maybe not super later, but just, maybe in those mid rounds, those late single digit, early double digit rounds, and let the rest of the field get their super early quarterbacks.
Kerrane, do you have any of these spiky quarterbacks you're looking at? The only one that sticks out to me is like no floor would be the correct way to put it, but has the potential to be, I'll say this upcoming year's.
I know who you're saying.
Trey Lance.
Yes.
I don't think Trey Lance has been good for his first 2 years, but our sample size is small. And also our sample size shows us that he wants to run like Justin Fields, like as much and put up as many yards. He's one that I'm like, I actually don't love dipping as deep because you get to like Aaron Rodgers, Stafford, Carr. Like these guys have like, so as a zoomer, I have just no interest in them. Trey Lance is one who his range of out as wide as any quarterback in the NFL, but that's okay. This is a tournament. We want the guys who can either, I don't care if I don't make my top 2 in my league, if it gives me the chance to make number 1.
I think Trey Lance might be a trap actually, because you're the whole game comes down to week 17, right? So you have to have, and to take on a guy who might not be a starter in week 17, and there's he's got there's real job uncertainty around Trey Lance in week 17.
There would have been more if Brock Purdy had not blown out his elbow.
But that's when he's most likely to be healthy, right?
Maybe. This seems like a year, man. It just seems like a year. And
I know. I hear that, and then I'm like, all this 49ers talk is like he'll be ready by training camp. So
that's just Looney Tunes. Not
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also
but
think
still, if Purdy comes back,
you could have said this about oh, Derek Carr. Of course, Derek Carr's gonna be out there week 17. Of course, like Stafford's gonna be out there week 17. I agree. It's definitely, I kind of fall on your side a little bit that like if I had to predict a starter in week 1 that won't be in week 17, Lance is up there. He's
on the list.
Anything can happen. But what I'm suggesting is why take on additional known risk? Like there's sort of known risk with Lance.
Mm-hmm.
There's, we don't know, like, sure, but Stafford, he got hurt, and any of these guys can get hurt. But do you really want to take on a guy like, Kenny Pickett, who I think stinks, but Kenny Pickett's going to be a starter at the end of this season. Should he be a starter? No, but he will be because they're not going to go away from him. So, and like, in a sense, I'm actually maybe more interested in like Bryce Young than Trey Lance. Bryce Young starting week 17 next year, and probably very early into the season, he will be a starter as well. Because obviously if the guy doesn't start until week 9 or something, that's going to probably kill the team. You need to have points from the, where you're taking him. He got an ADP of 125. You probably need points pretty early on in the season. But I think you're going to get it with Bryce Young. So I think Trey Lance right now going ahead of Bryce Young. I'd probably rather take Young.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.